Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. And I'm so glad you're here. If you're brand new here, I'm delighted that you've stumbled across us or actively searched us or followed someone's recommendation to be here. And if you're back again for more, as ever, I do appreciate that you choose to spend this time with me. Now, here on this podcast, especially if you're new, really my intention is to share with you some of my experience and some practical things about our personal evolution, our growth. It is about being a brilliant human. And I do believe that we're all a work in progress. So whether you're kind of just getting into the idea that you can sort of, as we would say, work on yourself or improve things in your life, or whether you've been around for years, chipping away, being a better and better version of yourself, I always love to offer kind of insights, things that will help you ultimately bring awareness to the sort of issues that come up in the human experience of life, so that you can then, again, I like to offer practical ways to sort of work with those so that we can all uplift ourselves and humanity together. So as the creator and custodian of MPA, I probably haven't, if I think back to all these episodes, it's episode 38 now, probably haven't mentioned too much about MPA in terms of just what it is in a simple way. Of course, I've mentioned it through every episode pretty much, but MPA stands for non-personal awareness, and it's a simple way to stop taking things personally. It's been described and used by thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And it's often considered one of those methods that's great for letting go of blocks. I often say letting go of the yucky stuff, letting in the yummy stuff of life. But what I love about it most is it's a really simple, resistance-free way to do that. So when I teach it to people who are interested in just improving their own lives, but also to people who are already maybe coaches or therapists, or work with people one-on-one in some way, and want to include it in their lives because they found that using the MPA process can really reduce the amount of resistance they experience with clients. And in terms of bringing awareness to things, today on the show, we're looking at pride. And often the things that I share on this show, I come from, what I see in my life or what I see with clients or in different situations. And this one was really interesting to me. We're looking at what I'm calling the dark side of pride. Pride has positive connotations and, in quotes, negative connotations. But I saw the dark side of pride sort of come up very strongly in a group setting. And the setting was one where, all of us were there looking for some support, advice, and help. And there was one particular person where it seemed to show up particularly strongly. And it was very obvious to me that there was sort of a sense of pride in not being helpable. And in spite of being there, paying money to get help, there was so much resistance going on. But it just struck me, she's so proud of the sort of the fight and the battle and the unhelpability, which was quite extraordinary. And of course, when you see something like that, or at least when I see something like that, I go, better take a good look in the mirror there. And I realized not only that I recognize the patterns from within myself, and I could look at places in me and go, oh my God, that really sucks, but I'm kind of proud of it, which means I defend it. And I watched how it played out in the different people that were part of the group, sometimes in a really strong way, sometimes in a subtle way, and realized that one of the things that that dark side of pride does is it really puts a barrier of resistance to sort of letting in the things that we really want. So today, what I wanted to do was to talk a little bit, sort of go a bit more into, what's the positive and negative side of pride, where the dark side or how the dark side of pride has become kind of culturally applauded in some situations, which are very, very unhelpful, in my opinion. Also, I want to help you sort of to understand what to look for, because there's definitely signs and symptoms that show up that can help you go, maybe I'm very proud of some part of me that doesn't help. And also give you an example of how to work with that and how you can look at it so you can move forward as ever. So let's have a little musical break and dive into the whole topic of the cultural support for the dark side of pride. Okay, so let's talk a bit about pride in general, because it's one of those words where there are lots of meanings. There's all sorts of, there's religious connotations. There's multiple meanings. I kind of Googled it to look at what the different meanings are that come up, and basically it starts off, on the positive side of, a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements, and that's a great thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's something which is really, it supports that self-esteem within you. And again, another aspect of it is, confidence and self-respect. That's something that is part of pride. Having pride in your creations, having pride in, or even pride in your children, in the sense that, I'm proud that they are born from me. I think that can be a really positive thing. And I think then there's the sort of more popular or more commonly known, if you like, negative side, which is, having an excessively high opinion of one's own importance, which I think is more what people tend to think of when it comes to sort of the negative side of pride, is that sort of arrogance part. But that's not really what I'm talking about here. When I'm talking about the dark side of pride, I'm talking about, in a sense, those positive aspects, the sort of sense of pride in one's own achievements or of who you are, when it's applied or twisted to things or ways of being within the self that are creating limitation and suffering. I think that's when it goes dark. So, and really it's about, so if there's some part of yourself that or there's a way of being that you are that doesn't serve you, and you're really proud of that, then we're into the realms of identity, and it can get very sticky, very hard to let go of. And when we come into the realm of identifying with these roles or these ideas, that can be very tricky to let go of. I love the word identity. If you break it down, it's id and then entity. So id is a very Freudian word about that sort of instinctual, sort of almost animal part of our psychology, and entity being a thing. So it's like the thing inside of you. It's just that sort of base animal instinct, really. Anyway, so identity really is, in terms of MPA and non-personal awareness, I talk about it as, this is who I am, is the sponsoring idea. So I think when it comes to the dark side of pride, there's been interesting to look back over some of the cultural things that have set up, if you like, given kudos to certain archetypal ways of behaving or personality, what would I call them, expressions that are not necessarily wholly a good thing, or can certainly come into the realm of limitation and suffering. Like the martyr is a classic one. There's this reverence for martyrs in our culture. Or if you look at what Disney did with women. I mean, there's so much. If you go back, especially to the early Disney films, like Snow White and Cinderella, where the main female character was applauded for sweeping up and or looking after the dwarves, or taking loads of abuse, and just being all happy about it. It's like praise upon praise for these things, which set up in our culture of, oh yes, I'm proud because I take abuse and I could put a smile on my face, when actually inside it could be very torturous, or certainly limit the ability to stand up in a place of empowerment. So it's interesting if you look back at some of the roles and ideas that we play out and how they've been supported. And this is where that kind of dark side of pride starts to overlay the experience of it. So the things to look out for, and I'm going to give you some examples so you get an idea, but the things to look out for, the signs that you've got sort of pride applied to something which is mixed inside of you, which is counter to something which serves you, is generally there's a sense of polarization. So polarization is a word which you can see it. I mean, today in our society, there's a great deal of polarization. There's a great split. There's a big gap between certain sectors of society, and that big gap has a lot of charge in it and creates a lot of conflict and keeps the separation in place. But we can find that inside of ourselves, that sense of polarization. So it's kind of, you'll notice when you've got one of these things going on, there's sort of push-pull mechanisms happening. And again, it's that mismatching. Like there's a big ask. Again, as I said at the top of the episode, there's a big ask and a big resistance. I really want this, but I'm really going to fight it coming to me. That's a massive sense of polarization and a push-pull. Now, you see that a lot in lots of internal conflict. But I think the thing that I noticed and I saw, and I think is a really key thing when it comes to bringing the pride element in, is when you see a real battling happening. It's a battling to defend that situation. Now, that can happen sort of overtly, literally, literally fighting, getting angry, shouting about it. Or it can be covert. That's more the sort of passive resistance to shutting down or being stubborn or even being passive aggressive. So there's different ways that it can manifest. So let me give you some examples of that. So one of my favorites is, I'm poor and proud of it. It's like, I want money. I need money. Give me some money, universe, please. But actually, you'll find that, there's the I'm poor and proud of it kind of stuff going on. So, for example, if you're saying, I need more money, want more money, come on, universe, God, whatever you want to call that, give me more money. But you're sharing posts on social media, angry posts about the rich, the elite, the evil rich. There's a mismatch going on. On one hand, you're saying I love and want money. On the other hand, you're saying the people with it, those people over there, there's all sorts of bad things about them. And there's, of course, all sorts of virtuous things about me not being them. You've got a split and you're fighting for your corner, which is the sort of lack of abundance, impoverished self. And there's pride involved in it. You see it with love as well. I want love, give me love. And then love comes and there's just this kind of shutdown happens and a batting it away, pushing it away, or even self-sabotage. I don't know if you ever had that experience. If you're someone who sort of feels, I guess, unlovable, you can get into that place, and this can be really subtle, but I'm asking you to really look inside. I'm the unlovable one. That's who I am, and I'm kind of proud of it. I've built my life on it. I've suffered through it, so I'm going to stand strong in this unlovableness. And then some wonderful, loving person comes your way, and they don't mean it. They're lying. They're disingenuous. I'm going to push them away, or go and do something stupid because, I need to, I need to prove myself right. That's what pride does. You see it in terms of acceptance. I just want to be accepted. Why does nobody accept me? And yet you investigate a bit deeper and you find that there's an identity in there about being different. I'm different. When they made me, they broke the mold. And those group behaviors are going to reject the group behaviors. Where do you want acceptance? It's part of a group, but the group behavior is really bad. They're all sheep. They just follow it. They're so uncreative. There's a massive mismatch and polarization going on there. And, help is another example. I want help. Okay, let me help you. No, not going to listen to that. No, you're wrong. I know that. Absolute portcullis comes down, but I really want help. Well, yeah, but there's a sense of pride in being helpless, maybe. And with the helper, it can go either way. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you find there's someone who is a helper, and in a sense, the pride is in the helping. So their thing isn't about, they're not even in the place of wanting help, but they need to help. They have pride. I'm the helper. That's who I am. In order to bolster this sense of identity, I need to make sure I can help you. So, I need to be needed. I need to be useful. And they won't take no for an answer. Can I help with that? No, I'm fine. No, really, I think you need help. No, actually, I'm fine. And the battle starts, right? It's like, yes, no, you need help. I'm definitely going to help you. And what it is, it's coming from that desperation inside themselves, because they feel if they can't sort of live in that identity of the helper, then, which gives them their pride, their sense of self-esteem, then they're nothing. And again, that's where we get into the depths of identity. So it's really kind of fascinating, all these different push-pulls. I don't know if you can recognize any of those, and it's by no means an exhaustive list. But, looking for those signs with push-pull, there's a mismatch going on, there's battling. That's the thing, I think, which is one of the key things. And, and a sense of, it can be covert or overt. Covert as in secret or hidden, and over as in an obvious, like that one. No, you do need help. If you don't let me help you, I'll kill you. I've turned the volume up very high on that one. So let's have a look at what's going on here. So let's use the asking for help example, as that was one that I saw. So there's a sense that the ask for help is coming, and yet you get the sense that no one can help them. Now, I've seen this a lot. People who come to me, maybe it's in a chat or even in a session, and they're coming, they're asking for help, but everything that you offer is just battered away. It's shut down. There's no openness in them because there's that sense of pride in the helplessness. I'm unhelpable. And when I watched this happen in the example I talked about that inspired this episode, it was really interesting. Once I kind of clocked it and started looking, there was a sense that there were tells. I don't know if you've ever played poker, but if you have your poker face, there's no tells. A tell is where they give it away, whether they're bluffing or not. And I would watch this person as they were in the battle, and every time they scored a point or battered away some offer of help, a sort of little smile appeared on her face, which was the kind of giveaway, really, that there was a sense of pride and these constant rebuttals that were going on. And it's as if there's some kind of negative pleasure happening. So remember, if you go back to sort of that pride gives you a sense of satisfaction and pleasure. And that's where I'm going back to the dark side of pride, is where you're getting satisfaction and pleasure from winning that battle, which is ultimately not going to serve. It ultimately doesn't allow you to receive what it is that you say you want. But of course, this is often so unconscious and hidden. And in a sense, that whole battle to win is to prove the identity. When you have an identity locked inside of you, I am this. The last thing that identity, which is almost like an entity inside of you, wants is to be disproved, to have its myth busted. It will do everything to prove itself right, even if that harms you, in order to maintain its survival. And there's a lot of secondary gains. I mean, you don't get this situation without kind of a sense of secondary gains. So secondary gains are like things that seem positive without investigation, or they may have been positive at some point in your life, but at this point, maybe say you're asking for, you're destitute, you want the money, then all the secondary gains you got from that poverty consciousness, maybe when you were a kid, or I don't know, help you survive in your family or whatever, are going to go out the window. So in the helping example, wanting help, I mean, or generally, let's look at some general secondary gains to give you an idea of what that might be. Well, it's a sense of pride in the positive association. So maybe it's strength. Maybe asking for help or receiving help is perceived as weakness. So to bat it off gives you a sense of strength, because strength has been a positive association in terms of surviving. Or maybe it's being better than. That can be quite a strong and subtle thing, is to be better than someone else. You see a lot of intellectual fighting, superiority of knowing that goes on. It could be about safety. There's a secondary gain of a sense of safety. Again, secondary gain because it may be that at one time that helped someone be safer, but in this context now it isn't doing that job at all. It can often be about avoiding vulnerability. Again, going back to the receiving help. Receiving help can be a very vulnerable thing, especially again if you've got something built up around strength and around being the strong one who knows who is the helper, all of those things. And again, I think in that situation, it was also about knowing, or really avoiding not knowing, or admitting that that you don't know. Again, if you really think about it, are there any times that I've done this? I mean, I totally can look back and go, yeah, I've totally done this. But look to your own life. Have you ever done this where someone starts to tell you something that you didn't know, but you felt you ought to know? So yeah, I know that. I mean, maybe you've never done that. I have. If I look back, and there's a sense of sort of the pride of being someone who knows, who is informed, who is educated, who's in the clique or the know. There's lots of ways, right? There's sort of a pride in being part of that, and it gets knocked if you admit that that you don't know. These days, I'm happy to say, most of the time, I've got no idea what you're talking about. It's so much easier. Yep, I haven't a clue. Can you help me out? Oh, you should know. Well, I don't. You don't know till you know, do you? And then I get to find out rather than again blocking it out, walking away, going, "I've no idea. I didn't learn anything there, did I?" I like to learn. So in a sense, I guess going back to I think what the key thing is with the dark side of pride is it is that sense of battling, really. So I guess that a really good question to ask yourself, if you catch this going on inside of yourself, is just ask yourself, well, if I win this battle, what then? It's a really good question to ask yourself. So let's say I prove, I'm battling to prove that I am unhelpable. No one can help me. Loads of brilliant therapists have tried, and they've all failed because I'm that clever at stopping them. What if you win? What do you get for that? You get to be unhelpable. Is that really what you want? I don't know. I'm poor and I'm proud of it. Show me the money, God, show me the money. But I'm poor and proud of it, and I'm going to fight for that and fight for the rights of the poor. And again, just to be really clear here, I'm not knocking the fights for the rights of those that are underprivileged or even abused in our society. And the distinction is when you've got this blind pride in it. If what you're saying you want is to be rich, but you hate the rich and you love the fact that you're poor, even if you wouldn't necessarily admit that to yourself, if you win that battle, if you start affirming I'm poor and proud of it, then you're not gonna increase your wealth in that way. And again, increasing your wealth is entirely a choice. The only question that I'm interested in is that causing you suffering? So all of these little battles, I'm unacceptable, unlovable, all of these things. If you're fighting for that identity, if you win, does that work for you? And if it doesn't, then maybe it's time to look at it. So let's have a little look at how you can do that. We're going to be talking a bit about MPA here. Now, if you haven't heard of MPA before, that you're new to this podcast, then it's a simple 6-line spoken word process, and you can get access to it for free. You can download it for free. If you go to either our main website, which is joelyoungmpa.com, or if you go to the podcast website, which is www.BABrillianthuman.com, you'll find links to download the MPA process sheet for free. And if you want to get to the show notes for this episode, by the way, it's www.BABrillianthuman.com/38. All right, so let's get into what you can do about this dark side of pride if it manifests in you, and how you can begin to shift it. So in terms of working with this kind of issue, MPA actually is a really fantastic tool, because if you think about it, what I'm saying to you is pride, or this dark side of pride, is really an attachment to an identity which is like supercharged. And one of the ways that MPA works, again, MPA stands for non-personal awareness. Generally, it's for not taking things personally. And identification or identifying with something is taking something very personally. So when you use MPA, I'll often say to people that MPA works with shifting the identities. And the thing about identities is really fascinating because you can work on beliefs, or you can work on emotions, or you can work on behaviors. But often all of those things are subject to an identity. What do I mean by that? Well, an identity, let me think of an example. So if, say, your identity is I'm unhelpable, let's use that one. That's a good example. Then being the person that is I am unhelpable is going to have with it all sorts of beliefs that prop it up, all sorts of feelings that come from that. And out of that, there'll be the expression of lots of behaviors. And all of these things are automatic. And under the umbrella of I'm unhelpable, there's going to be a large amount of wriggle room and creativity from that identity, which again, think of it in terms of an entity, like a living aspect of yourself. So you might shift a belief here, shift a belief there, and it'll go, okay, I can deal with that. I can just reword it, change it around. As long as I get to support the identity, that's fine. But if you shift the identity, then you'll find that there's a whole different set of beliefs, ideas, emotions, and behaviors that come along automatically. This is why with MPA in the sort of last 13 years, whatever, that I've been sharing and teaching it, I've seen amazing things happen with just a very small amount of work, because the MPA process is very fast and effective. Because it's shifting identity, often all of the beliefs, emotions, and behaviors shift seemingly all by themselves, which is fantastic, right? So because MPA is targeting identity specifically, it's a great tool to share with you here. So in the MPA world, you can use MPA two ways. Either I say letting go of the yucky stuff or letting in the yummy stuff. Letting go of the yucky stuff often is the stuff that you take on, the hand-me-down ideas, if you like, where you said, that's me, that is. It's passed its sell-by date, and then it allows it to pass. But there's also the exclusions, which is where you say you personalize things to, that's not me, which is a classic example of where, I'm poor and I'm proud of it. They're rich, I'm poor. They're rich, it's not me. They have the money, I don't. People with the money, that's not me. It's just as much of a personalization that affects you. It's just not a local personalization. It's personalizing it to others, which literally closes the door and doesn't allow you to be included in that experience. So often I'll see in this kind of situation that we're talking about, where there's this sense of pride, which is turning up the attachment to an identity that doesn't serve. You'll get the expressions of those experiences of exclusion. So people will describe as feeling like an outsider. Any sense of lack is ultimately somewhere where you close the doors. You're kind of inviting it into your space, but your doors are locked and bolted. And you get a sense of lack because you want the experience, but you've closed your doors of it, which can be frustrating. So we see a lot of frustration, or a sense of marginalization. It can even go as far as having a sense of really being a victim. I prayed so hard and it still hasn't come. Poor me, poor me. Again, or it can even sort of escalate to envy. Why is it never me? They always have it, I don't. These are all signs that you've got this battle, this mismatch, this polarization, and you've literally closed the doors and you've personalized what you want to other people and not to yourself, or you haven't included yourself. And when you do the MPA process, all I say, MPA just opens the doors. It surprises people when I say that. And again, the doors is kind of a metaphorical way to say it, really. Again, it's like if you were a house with an entry door and an exit door, that's what we do. We open the doors and we decide what we let in, and we open the exit doors, and decide what we let out. Some stuff we let in, it's rubbish, but we still lock it in. Someone says, you're not good enough when you're 6. By the time you're 56, it's had 50 years. It only came in for a cup of tea and a slice of cake. And you wonder why it's kicking up all sorts of symptoms. You haven't opened your exit door to let it out because you've taken it personally, identified with it. And again, or you say, I want this, but I'm not allowed to have it because it's them, not me. It's like you invited it to your house, like a pizza delivery man. And it's outside your door, knocking and going, look, I've got other deliveries. I've been here 30 years. You've been asking for me. You're definitely on my order sheet, my cosmic order sheet, if you like. And you're not letting me in. I'm getting a bit annoyed now, and I'm going to start trying to bang on this door and making a ruckus outside. Again, more symptoms, a sense of lack, a sense of frustration, feeling like an outsider. So again, a really good question to ask yourself when you're in this heady mix of overdeveloped sense of attachment to identity, the dark side of pride, this mix matching, this polarization, the sense of lack, is to ask, have you suffered enough? Because the interesting thing about pride is, it can be really stubborn. I literally heard this person that inspired this episode say, I know it's not good for me. I know it harms me. I know it doesn't help to put all the barriers up, and yet still continue to do so to a certain degree. It's like, so it's really fascinating. So you kind of have to get to the point where you've suffered enough, which means that the pain tips the scales of those secondary gains. And when you do that, then you can be available to do the work. So with MPN, again, you can go and download the process sheet from the website, joelyoungmpa.com, or you can get it at www. I say www at the front every time because I don't know how it works. This is the dark arts of internet, but it doesn't seem to work if you just put beabrillianthuman.com. So you've got to have the www.beabrillianthuman.com. Go to that site. You can find links to download the sheet. It's a 6-line process that you just need to go through the sheet and find out what is the way that you're expressing whatever this identity is. We call that spew. And then run it through the process and see where it takes you. And people say, well, if it's, which side do I do, the positive side or the negative side? Whichever seems like it has more pop to it, really. Again, if you get the sheet and if it's a little confusing for you, if you've not done anything like this before, there's an offer straight after you download the sheet for the training, which is only £47. And that will really show you all the ins and outs of how to use it on yourself in that way. But using MPA will help you to open your door so you can begin to let out the pride, let out the sense of attachment, and begin to include yourself in the vibration. A great story just to really illustrate how that works. There's a guy called Barry who came to one of the seminars that I was doing, and he was at the back of the room. Everyone was in this big love space, and he'd paid his money to come to these things. Everyone all gets into the big love, and everyone's feeling great. And he was sat at the back of the room with his arms folded. And I said, Barry, what's going on? He said, I come to these things, and everyone feels this love, and I don't feel love. I never feel love. So again, a classic case, and he was, again, in the way he was, there was that sense of pride in, I hate it, but I kind of love it. I love being the guy that doesn't get it. And so I just got him to do the MPA process in that case with the word love, because he was unlovable, unavailable to love. He's the one that doesn't get love. He's the one who comes to these things and doesn't get love. And he just went through the 6 simple lines, which you'll get when you download it. And he kind of just cracked open. It took him, he had a very strong emotional response to it, which isn't always the case with MPA. But it was like the bud that had been locked down, all the chains that he'd put around himself just sort of fell away in the space of about 8 minutes. And the whole group would just watched his face transform, and he kind of looked up shyly when he'd completed the process. And it was obvious that for the first time in, I don't know how old he was then, probably mid-40s to mid-50s, Barry let in love. And it was a huge, huge transformation. And I said to him, welcome to a world of love that includes you, because that's what you're doing. If you're excluding yourself from these vibrations because you're proud of the limitations, then why not go download the sheet, give it a go, open those doors, and include yourself in the vibration of what you want. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks so much for being here and listening. If you like what you hear, please go ahead and tell someone. There's no better way to spread the word about this podcast than word of mouth. You can tell them to go to the website, mouthful this morning, www.babrillianthuman.com. And if you're wherever you're listening to this on some podcast platform, generally I think I've heard that the podcast platform search engine features aren't great, but they should be able to find it just by typing in "Be a Brilliant Human" with Joel Young, and that should find me there. But go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm always open to feedback. If you go to the podcast website, you can leave me a message if you like. People often or sometimes have left me messages with questions, any topics you'd like me to cover, any feedback. If you feel so inclined, you can go ahead and give me a review, especially on iTunes. I would love that. And make sure you go ahead and check out joelyoungmpa.com and download that MPA worksheet. In the show notes, which will be the website /38 for today, I'll lay out some of the stuff that I've said today. There'll also be some links to other episodes that I feel are sort of relate to this. And of course, on that page, you'll find the link so you can download the sheet. I hope to see you next week for another installment. That's the word I'm looking for, of the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. Until then, have a fabulous week. All that remains is to cue the moo.